Houston Texans in the AFC South, cornerback. Anybody that can cover in the back end. Cornerbacks that can cover, linebackers who can cover. Deshaun Watson can only cover so many warts in the defensive pass game. You know, you can't just continue to win shootouts every single week. And I think that was the reason why I never really believed in Houston this year, is they were so reliant on the quarterback and the pass game to overcome what they had in the back end. And they would, every 4 weeks, they'd have a decent game with their safeties and corners, but it just wasn't consistent enough.
Yeah, basically the entire secondary needs some significant work. The fact that Jonathan Joseph is still playing for them is a problem.
And they got to get creative without top first-round picks.
Yeah.
They're going to have to – the margin for error in Houston, and then when we talk about the Rams, when you don't have first-round picks, the margin for error is just tighter. So you have to get creative either with trades, free agency, or hitting on second, third, fourth rounders.
They could also do with finding a backup plan to Will Fuller, because apparently Will Fuller appears to be institution or fundamental to the functioning of that offense. And when he's not on the field, everything changes in a dramatic fashion. But Will Fuller has a fairly extensive and long injury history, and if he is that important, you need to find a way of replicating what it is he does without him being on the field. So again, great draft class. Let's find ourselves a blazing speedster that we think can do what Will Fuller does, or at least replicate it when he's not on the field.
Henry Ruggs?
I mean, I don't think they're going to be able to get that high to get him,
Probably
right?
not.
But there are other speedsters in this draft that we can maybe target. Like I say, I was asking you the other day, I don't understand why Kenny Stills can't replicate what Will Fuller does, given that Kenny Stills, that was basically his one trick throughout his career.
Lost a step a little bit, maybe.
Right. But either way, somebody needs to, because every time that guy goes off the field, the entire offense changes in a way that cripples it.
I have to say, the Texans have done a great job of using Will Fuller. When you have a speed guy, I think a lot of people just envision, hey, he'll just run go routes, but they use him on the deep crossers. They use him on double moves down the field. They do find a way to get him behind the defense on the regular. And when they do that, and you have Nuke Hopkins on the other side, and then some reasonable playmakers surrounding that, then you've got a really good pass game. And it shows, like I said, that shows up every few weeks where it's like, man, this team is really tough to stop when you have all those guys out on the field. Tennessee Titans, got to figure out the quarterback position first. Do you bring back Ryan Tannehill? I mean, the more I look into that,
draft somebody.
It's really risky.
Draft some. Well, so I franchise him. You have to.
I would franchise him before I lock him up.
I can't see anything to do other than franchise tag the guy. The tag was made for this kind of situation, which is he was absolutely ridiculous this year in a way that A, was so good, there's no way we can possibly let him walk out after that, and B, was so completely unsustainable, there's no way you can bank on it long term. So you're basically in a situation where you have to play him again next year, knowing that there's almost no way it can go well, or at least not as well as it went this year. So franchise tag him. Lock him down for 1 year, knowing that you punt him out of the building this time next year when it all goes south. So franchise tag him and draft a quarterback who you think will actually be the succession plan long term, because there's no way this goes well long term.
Let's deconstruct the Tannehill season really quick, because last week I wrote about this. The biggest quarterback outlier seasons of the decade. And I sorted this in two different ways. I called the first outlier based off of grade, so how well you played, and then the second was more production based. So based off grade, which guys had this one incredible season which just didn't match the rest of their career? So the five biggest ones was Eli Manning in 2011.
Best season of his career.
Right, by far. Robert Griffin III. RG3's 2012. Cam Newton and Carson Palmer in 2015. Cam wins MVP. Carson Palmer's right up there with him. And then Tannehill last year. Now, the PFF data is really good at telling the story here, because when you go back and you're like, all the work that we've done has said there's a few things that are stable that you bank on. It's clean pocket stuff, what you do in the bigger sample sizes, but also you own your negatively graded throws a little bit more. So that means the other side of the stuff, under pressure and positively graded throws, can fluctuate. So you could point to all five of these seasons being extreme outliers for these guys in either the percentage of positives or their play under pressure. And it makes intuitive football sense. The positively graded throws are dependent a little on supporting cast, right? So they tend to fluctuate. So when you surround these guys with great talent, and when you go back, Eli was throwing to Victor Cruz, Hakeem Nicks. They had good production from their running backs and tight ends. They just had this really good group. RG3, it was the play action game. That's really unsustainable. He averaged 6 more yards per attempt on play actions than he did standard dropbacks. Unsustainable right there. Great play caller with the Shanahans. Cam Newton, this was the year where they finally had some guys who can get open, not the big slugs that they were just hoping to, catch a few Cam overthrows. He led the league in positively graded throws. Carson Palmer, we ranked remember their receiving core that year?
Yeah.
We ranked them number 1 with Larry Fitzgerald, Michael Floyd. Who else was there? J.J. Nelson was sneaking behind the defense every now and again. Jermaine Gresham was decent. I'm missing somebody. Who else was out? But either way, they were rolling like 4 deep. John Brown was there too. And those guys were getting open everywhere. And then last year with Tannehill, you had A.J. Brown, his emergence, Corey Davis. You just like the trickle down of A.J. Brown becoming a number 1 and everybody else becoming, more role player type. That's what really helped with Tannehill. He was number 1 in positively graded throws. He had never been higher than 5th, and he'd only been in the top 10 in positively graded throws that one time.
So that's a
big outlier.
With the exception of RG3, all of the others had an extensive amount of data behind them saying that this was a monster, outlier / anomalous season, right? Mm-hmm. It would have been very foolish to, off the back of that year, do anything crazy in terms of locking these guys down to monster contracts, because it's just not going to happen again. So this is your Tannehill situation, right? He's had a season that compares to all those, and actually in like grading terms, was it better than all of those? Right? He was top.
Yeah, I think it was. So, and Palmer's weird too, because he had this huge drop off at the end of the year. He had the thumb injury and all that stuff, but Palmer was up there and comparable.
So essentially, Tannehill is graded as well, if not better than all of those seasons. Probably has a worse baseline than most of those players in terms of the rest of his career. Certainly when you consider like the last season or 2 in Miami. So like you can't bank on it long term. It's just not going to repeat. But equally, there's no way. I mean, I'm all for the idea that, when the numbers tell you to do things, lean in that direction unless humanly possible. But it would be an amazing decision to come off the back of that year and say, bye-bye. We don't think you're going to do it again, so see ya.
So do you think the numbers would be pointing toward Tannehill being a guy you have to give another shot, or are you confident enough that this is a true outlier that does not match?
I would suggest all the numbers say that this is such an outlier that he is going to go, at the very best, he would go back to early career Tannehill as a baseline. And then that is what you're deciding is if it's worth paying big time starter money to. And honestly, the data would probably say it's not.
Now, the alternative to that is you don't have Tannehill, and you're in a mess because you don't have anything. So
you have to go looking for a quarterback at that point. But I would say that...
hedge.
Yes. So I would say that the data probably says...
franchise and hedge.
The data probably says that given those 2 choices of lock him up long-term to a monster contract or let him walk out the door knowing that he's not going to repeat that, the data would say let him walk.
Right.
So... the halfway house is I can't let him walk because he was that good. We dragged us from 2-4 to the playoffs, knocking off 2 of the better teams along the way in the postseason. Like, let's, all right.
And this is also we've talked about the 2017 Jaguars with Bortles and the 2018 Bears with Trubisky. They both came off years where they either won the division or, with the Jaguars case, went to the AFC Championship. This is a different decision from that because Bortles was dragged to the AFC Championship. Trubisky, we feel, was dragged to that incredible season with the Bears. This was Tannehill as the catalyst, right, for the Titans. So this is different. This is us saying, man, I know what we just saw. He was incredible. He deserves every bit of credit for what the Titans did.
Yeah, I just know it's not going to happen
However, I don't know
twice.
if it can happen again. Someone also asked me a good question last week about this. Does age, does any of that stuff come in? I think when you go back and look at these outliers, there's no rhyme or reason to it, right? Eli was in like year 8, and it was kind of just out of nowhere, and it's like he's playing incredible under pressure. RG3 was a rookie, so that had us rethinking, should it have been RG3 over Andrew Luck? Look at this. Cam Newton was in year 4, and that's the most dangerous one, right? Because everybody thinks you give a guy, once he gets to like year 4.
That was Eli and Flacco the first time, right? It's Eli's first Super Bowl.
07,
Super Bowl.
They figured it out.
Oh, look at the run they've just gone on. This is it. It's happened. Now
Flacco's a good point too, right? So once you're in year 4, people think, okay, that's the perfect time to just turn a corner in your career. It didn't happen for Cam. He's never duplicated it before. And Carson Palmer was like year 12, 13. I mean, he was like 10 years in, whatever, 12 years in.
He was in an Arian system that coached that season out of him.
Right.
And RG3 is a weird case because, one, knee injury at the end of it, so we never really saw the same guy again. And two, it's been documented that he essentially rebelled against the system that helped him.
Correct.
It's like, I don't like this idea of being this successful with all this movement and play action. I want to be a traditional Peyton Manning pocket passer, which he isn't. So like, the dude self-sabotaged in addition to having his knee fall out from under him. So like, it would have been hard to replicate that even with all things being equal, and they weren't.
I think it's a good discussion with the Tannehill thing. I like my conclusion. I'm franchise and hedge. Look for that next guy.
The bottom line is you need a quarterback because Tannehill almost certainly isn't it, even if you franchise tag him, which you should, because I don't see another option.
Pass rushing talent is the other thing that we looked at with the Tennessee Titans, but it pales in comparison to the quarterback.
Yeah.
Indianapolis Colts. Speaking of quarterbacks, Jacoby Brissette.
Yeah.
Someone to replace Jacoby.
Do you know what his final season statistics were? Because he still looked stupidly healthy.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was 92 passer rating, whatever it was. Good touchdown to interception ratio, but like a 60 passing grade. So when we talk about unsustainable stuff, in that article I wrote about production outliers too. Like the grade doesn't match the stats.
18 touchdowns, 6 picks.
Yeah. The grades didn't match the stats for Brissette. And I think this is where you look at the guys he was throwing to and you're like, on paper, they don't look great. And they didn't grade all that great. I think this is where it circles back to coaching again.
Right. And thankfully, his passer rating came down over the year so that he only ended up like 20-something in passer rating. Whereas like earlier in the season, it was like 13 touchdowns, 3 picks, and a passer rating like insane. I was like, wow, it's kind of hard to argue that he wasn't as good as that. Now at least the numbers came back down to earth a little bit, and it's like, okay, he wasn't that good. Thank you. We were saying that all the way along, but at least now it's easier to argue.
I've always looked at Brissette since he had a really good preseason game with New England. He went to Indianapolis, got forced into the starting lineup in 17, and then this past year in 19. I've always said, look, Brissette looks like one of those guys who's a top 3 backup.
Yes. Or
the Case Keenum bridge quarterback, right? The guy that you could trust to go start a few games, can win a few games if you are transitioning from one quarterback to the next. I think that's what he is. I don't know that there's any more there with Jacoby Brissette.
Yeah, I mean, I think this season was his opportunity to show he was something more than that. He already looks like one of the better backups in the NFL. The circumstances under which he was starting last time were not ideal in terms of being thrust into it at no notice, a new system, all this kind of stuff. This season was better in terms of things are around you now in a way that they weren't before. You've had time in the system. You have better supporting cast. We've put one of the best rosters around you you're ever going to see. If you're not better this time, you're not better. So Brissette
at the same time, though, he didn't know he was a starter until August.
Right, but that's less important than having been there, like in the building for a while.
No, I agree.
The last time it was he got traded there, and then it was like, right, start.
I'll also say, even though his stats were better than his grades, it's not like they did have the best supporting cast in the world. So the only thing that gives me a little bit of pause at writing off Brissette is that he's never had that beautiful supporting cast and all that stuff, despite getting elevated by our numbers this year or having some luck. It's still not going to keep me from looking for the next guy. I'm
I think the big thing is that it was a much better situation this time than last time, and his grade wasn't any better. Like if he had at least taken a step in the right direction, then you could say, okay, now if we get him a true number 1 or if we add a couple of weapons here or there, maybe. But no, it was like the same guy. So I think Jacoby Brissette is what Jacoby Brissette is, which is not good enough to be your starting quarterback.
There's a lot of rumors that the Colts first round are looking at a Justin Herbert. They're looking at Jordan Love from Utah State. I do think it makes sense to take a shot at the quarterback position. Let's round out the AFC South. Jacksonville Jaguars. We went off-ball linebacker. It feels like they have other needs as well. Interior D-line, O-line, tight end. I think just overall playmakers for the Jags. I keep coming back to passingly, give me playmakers and guys that can stop the playmakers. Of course, you need a quarterback to get the ball.
So that's what I was going to ask, right? Have they got a quarterback?
I don't know. The Jaguars quarterback situation is like it's
mess.
Like a podcast in itself.
It's a disaster. It's an absolute train wreck, having looked like it was in a really good spot a couple of months ago.
They have a chance to be like the new Andy Dalton line. Like I don't know. Have we seen peak Gardner Minshew?
Huh?
So it's like the same question we just asked about guys that have peak years. We lean on, well, he did this as a rookie, therefore it's just going to get better. It's tough as a rookie. You're just going to get better every year. If that was truly the case, man, Gardner Minshew looks like future's bright.
Sure.
Right? Or was he just awesome as a rookie? He's got some physical limitations and all that stuff, but the league's not ready for it, and you can hide him, and he, has some anticipation and things to hide. Like, can he be the next Chad Pennington that overcomes some of the, the poo arm and all that stuff?
Poo arm.
Can he be the guy? He was unbelievable throwing the ball down the field, touch and accuracy and all that stuff. And is he the guy, or do you still try to catch lightning in a bottle with 5 great games of Nick Foles?
I mean, with the decisions they made at quarterback, they now put themselves in a situation where I don't know that you can have faith in anybody in that quarterback room, one of whom you've got fairly significant money invested in, the other whom you've got almost nothing invested in. And what the hell are you supposed to do heading into next year? What if you have an open competition between the 6th-round rookie or 6th-round second-year guy on peanuts and the guy you pay giant money to, so he'd have the respect of everybody?
Would you add a Tua or a Herbert to the mix too? Just to
really make it chaotic? Like a Royal Rumble of QBs? The high draft pick, the low draft 6th-rounder in his second year who showed quite a lot as a rookie, and the guy who's had one of the most improbable Super Bowl runs of all time, very little else in his career, but you paid monster money to so that everyone would respect him. That as a 3-way ladder match of quarterback competition would be madness.
But the value of knowing, right? The value, because say you bring Tua into the mix, clearly he's an upgrade from Minshew and an upgrade from Foles. Then you can see if there's any value for Minshew on the market. Maybe Foles. You flip him to the Bears.
What
if
he isn't? What if he's in the same kind of level? Now you've got 3 of these lunatics with various different levels of investment.
Because the alternative is you fill these other needs that were listed here: off-ball linebacker, an interior D-line, an O-line, and tight end, and it doesn't move the needle. You could add Aaron Donald to the mix. You could add Quentin Nelson. You could add Gronk would maybe move the needle, but you could add another great player, and it doesn't move the needle as much as the potential of Tua to be the guy over those other ones or whoever it might be. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just think that this is already a crazy quarterback competition. Adding a 3rd guy who is not necessarily a clear-cut answer would just be nuts. It would be the most chaotic quarterback situation I can remember.
So among the other needs that we talked about, off-ball linebacker was horrible last year. Nobody graded above 46. Am I seeing this right?
Yeah.
Or one guy was a 68.1, Leon Jacobs. And all these guys played 200 or more snaps. They were all terrible. So linebacker, Myles Jack had a rough season, banged up and all that stuff. But and then O-line just hasn't been good for a few years. Even in 2017, when Leonard Fournette broke off a few big runs and it felt like the run game was protecting them and all that stuff. That wasn't a good O-line or run game. That was just the defense was really good that year, and they played low-scoring games.
Don't worry, though. I'm sure once Cam Robinson gets healthy, he'll turn it right around.
He has been unhealthy since his freshman year of college.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.